Hello and good morning or good afternoon everyone, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chance Millett-Bangs from Business Review Webinars and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have Dassault Systèmes biovia with us today, who will be discussing One Quality for Enterprise Excellence. Today's guest speaker is Ken Haywood, Head of Portfolio Management for QRC. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform On24. This webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect, please click the link you received via email to rejoin the session. All of the icons along the bottom of your screen are the interactive widgets that we have on offer today, so please interact with them all throughout the session. You may ask your questions at any point by using the Q&A widget or by using the questions box. We will try and get through as many of your questions as we can once the presentation has concluded. Please use the yellow help widget if you experience any technical difficulties or require any further assistance. But for now, please allow me to hand you over to Ken. Ken, over to you.
Thank you, Chance. I appreciate that. And welcome. As Chance said, my name is Ken Haywood. I'm Head of Portfolio Management for QRC, which is Quality, Regulatory and Compliance within biovia. And today's webinar, One Quality for Enterprise Excellence. But first of all, just to position who biovia are, biovia is the life sciences brand of Dassault Systèmes. Dassault Systèmes is a passionate scientific company of over 13,000 people, covering 12 industries and with customers in 140 countries. A strong focus on research and development, biovia is a top 5 life sciences software company with a long track record of quality solutions. And you'll probably find that at least one biovia product is used in all of your companies, either in the laboratory, within manufacturing, in research and development. Okay, so today's webinar is about One Quality. And One Quality and this conversation is not about so much biovia products, but how an organization thinks about quality, quality's role, how integrated quality can improve operational performance across the whole company. Some of the topics we'll touch on are adjacent to that: collaboration inside and outside the firewall, common data platforms, integrated processes between quality and other business areas. So One Quality is about bringing these themes together to create an integrated view across the product lifecycle. So we're going to range fairly far and wide over the challenges, solutions and approaches relating to quality and efficiency. And then we'll speak a bit about One Quality and then come back to biovia towards the end of the presentation. And I think at no point during this will we mention any specific products. And so I will say at the beginning, if you do want to ask questions about products, please use the Q&A as Chance mentioned earlier. Okay, so we're going to talk about integrated solutions, leveraging a single source of truth, and I'll come back to that idea in a few slides' time. And overall, at the end, we'll circle back on the benefits of a total quality approach. Okay. So first of all, we're beginning to think about a life cycle management approach to quality. So when we say life cycle management, we mean whole product life cycle management. And so we should think of quality in terms of change control. So change control, not just about changing content or changing a machine, but about an integrated change control that works across all impacted areas of quality. So how do we improve traceability, reliability, speed of the supply chain, speed of regulatory changes? So we're beginning to think of a life cycle management approach to quality, and I mean a product life cycle management approach. And so think of things like automated change control, where we can improve the traceability, reliability and speed of change across the supply chain, and regulatory and development as well. One of the core concepts there is a single source of the truth. So by that we mean which system, which process is managing and controlling specific pieces of data or content within the organization. If you haven't got one place to go to understand the context of a manufacturing change or to understand the status of a market registration, then you immediately have increased cost and a loss of control. And so we think that's one of the measures we should be using for quality, is that can we have a single source of the truth. And I think the second point really is around moving from maximizing capacity to optimizing cycle time. Cycle time is all about cost and delays, increasing speed to market. And if we focus on cycle time optimization rather than maximizing our capacity, then we'll get increased benefits. Second topic is around collaboration. Most companies these days do not operate in isolation. They're working within a extended group of companies that are not just a supply chain, but include first, second, and third tier suppliers, include contract manufacturers, contract research, contract clinical, contract trials, etc. And so it's no longer good enough just to think about systems inside the firewall. We also need to be looking about how we collaborate across a virtualized network. Old school ideas such as file transfer and Dropbox, email, scanning, faxes, those things just do not work where we're talking about working from many organizations to many other organizations. They only work on a one-to-one basis. And so we need new ways of collaborating. We need new hubs to allow us to use single systems across organizations. I think it's worth remembering that therapeutic development, therapeutic regulatory approaches and manufacturing are expensive, they're slow, they're high risk. And so it's critical that we can have a view across the data within the business in order to turn that into knowledge. And only by having that single source of the truth and a common data platform can we get a comprehensive and coherent view across all of the data that's impacting our quality. Okay, so let's step back and look at some of the challenges we're facing today in the life sciences industry. And if you want to follow up on any of these individual data points, we do have evidence links for these. First of all, clinical tests rarely lead to a marketable product. And it's a sad but true fact that only around 1 in 10 compounds that exit phase 1 actually reach market approval. And so it's really important that we keep the costs of development up to that phase low, that we fail as fast as possible if we are going to fail, so that only those compounds that will be eventually successful get through that gate. And we're also seeing over the last 20 years a declining R&D productivity. Most of the big blockbusters of the past are not being repeated over the last 5 years. And when we think that the cost of developing a drug is between 2 and 2.5 billion, and that takes 12 to 14 years, that's a substantial problem. And so increasing productivity by leveraging technology whilst failing quickly is a key competitive advantage. We're also seeing the new world of generics. If you are on the phone and you're a generics manufacturer, then generics are fulfilling 88% of prescriptions. If you're still working in a proprietary environment, then it's critical that the drugs we do release are effective and fast to market. I think the last one I want to mention is that 60% of actives are now manufactured in India and China. And so that concept of a virtualized supply chain is now a global virtualized supply chain with substantial quality challenges that need to be addressed within it. Two of the things that we feel are critical in addressing those challenges, apart from what I've already mentioned, are, first of all, unifying access across applications and in the cloud, so that the virtual teams that are working either in development or clinical or within manufacturing are able to share the same data both inside the organization and across those virtual networks. And secondly, to start to break down the walls between the data silos we have in different parts of the business so that we can look at a single data model across the organization. Now, within biovia, we consider that common data model to be the biovia foundation. That allows us to be using the same data within discovery, within the laboratory, within production, and then overseeing that within quality. And so the idea of the foundation is to pull together everything from lab notebooks to chemical inventory, document and quality management, through to process simulation and CPV and production monitoring. That allows us to create a feedback loop from what's happening in production back to how products are designed in the laboratory. So if you look at, and here we're talking about the biovia portfolio, but this really applies across the organization. One more, there we go. In ideation or discovery, we have collaborative science. Within R&D, we're using laboratory capabilities that we later reuse in production. So let's make sure that we're sharing a product development ecosystem all the way from early discovery through to supply. So that then allows us to reuse and retune the parameters all the way through the process. We also have a quality and regulatory management solution that's running across that whole piece as well, so that we're applying the same processes to, for example, a clinical kappa as we are to a kappa occurring in a supplier within the supply chain. That kind of approach allows us to have a consistent response to audit, to have a global response to findings within any one particular site, so that we can defend ourselves against challenges wherever they may occur. It's worth just picturing those pieces, and you'll see quality assurance, quality control halfway through the middle of this eye chart, which is positioning the entire Dassault Systèmes portfolio across discovery to supply. And it's interesting to see how much of that white space is covered by Dassault Systèmes, not just within biovia, but within the broader organization. Okay, we're at 15 minutes or so there, and I'm going to pause now for our first poll. And so just to make sure you're all awake, I'm going to hand off to Chance, who will talk you through it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ken. So as Ken just mentioned, it is now time for our first of today's polling questions. So if you can please select the answer most relevant to you by clicking in one of the radio buttons and then press submit to log your response. So is compliance seen as a burden in your organization? Your options are yes, compliance is adding additional steps to our processes. Somewhat, it adds value, but it also adds time and cost. Or no, it is part of our quality strategy. Again, just please select your answer and then press submit to log your response. Just going to give you a few more seconds to respond to this poll, and then I'm going to move on to view the results. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Let's move on to see how you responded. Okay, so it seems somewhat, it does add value, but it also time and cost is our top answer there. Ken, is that what you were expecting from this poll?
That's interesting. I was expecting more people to respond, with it's part of our quality strategy, and I think that speaks to the fact that there's still a lot of work to be done to prove that quality adds value to the process. Yeah, a good result, and I'm really pleased to see that only about 1 in 10 think that it's a burden to the organization, and maybe they should reach out to some of my colleagues on that. Great. So we've talked about one topic, which is really having a single data platform and a single source of the truth as a conceptual idea. I think the second one that's aligned with that is the concept of consolidating platforms and deploying things with minimum customization. And we see this being a key benefit to a one quality approach because companies are tired with dealing with multiple vendors and finger pointing between vendors with a lack of tight integration between their products, difficulties with upgrades and customization, and the reduced vendor relationship you get when you're working with multiple suppliers. So we're seeing a global trend towards companies finding a one-stop shop, and not necessarily for all their needs across the whole company, of course, but specifically around that quality arena, having one vendor that can link together all of these requirements. And I think a second thing, and I'm going to be slightly challenging here and suggest that there is an opportunity these days to take an off-the-shelf deployment of software, to configure that minimally, and to reduce both the validation overhead, the cost of upgrade, and at the same time shorten the integration path. So if you now have a system where you have one source of the truth, a single data platform, deployed quickly, very easy to upgrade, then you're then in a position to take the best advantage of that. Now that, when we say out of the box, that box might be in the cloud, it might be on-premise, or it may be in a hybrid combination of the two. And there are still many companies who are looking for some of that information to be held on-premise and are happy for some of it to be in the cloud. And I think it's critical that vendors can work in both environments. Many companies who are either newly created or moving into new business areas are looking for best practice. And so one of the things that we've been doing for nearly a decade now is delivering packaged solutions where the practices we've seen in companies are repeated in new companies. And we now have best practices for many of the operational processes across quality organizations. Now, we're not saying that those are the only way of doing things or that they're best for you, but it's a great place to start. So looking at the best practices we've designed, start with those and iterate into something that's tailored for your operation. I think just a last point that's not on that slide, and that is a lot of our customers are seeing great benefit in working with a community of other customers who are using similar processes. And certainly our customer community has been working together on how to improve those processes in conjunction with biovia. Just to look at collaboration within that configured environment a little bit more deeply. One of the things we've been thinking about is the maturity of collaboration and how you improve that over time without having to take revolutionary change. And so we see a lot of companies, I mentioned earlier, FTP, email, Dropbox, a lot of companies working at that basis. And if you think of it in terms of documents, then really they're shipping final executed documents to a limited audience. And as soon as they've done that, they've lost that information, it's gone, and it's out of control. And many organizations are now looking to bring that collaboration back into control, to share processes rather than merely distributing final output. And so we see gradually climbing that maturity curve and improving the level of control, the strength of relationship, and the performance of the process over that is bringing a lot of advantages. Okay, so the third concept here really is around linking data to meaning. And so if I were to say, oh look, the answer is 278, and really that should have said 42, but it does say 278, it's meaningless until I add the context around it, that is actually a speed. Still slightly meaningless until you place it in space. And so that's not a very useful dot. That's the one I usually get when I've got no signal. But now if we say 278 kilometers per hour in Shanghai, it's probably a bullet train. And so we've built our level of data, we've built our level of understanding of that without actually increasing the amount of data. It's really the context within that data, within which that data is living, that gives it meaning. And so if we begin to broaden our meaning of data, decorate it and integrate it with other sources, we can understand that a minor change within production to a machine upstream can have a major change to the final product at QA release. And we're beginning to see with some of our products like Discoverant that we can monitor that, we can add meaning to the data by understanding the production process and therefore drive improvements and change within that process. Okay, so some of the benefits of these interoperable solutions, we have broader access to research and expertise of external partners. So instead of having a transactional relationship with those partners, if we're having a collaborative relationship, we can better leverage their knowledge and their experience. We can also reduce the cost of that work because we're streamlining not just the spin up and spin down, but the total operational process of working with a clinical researcher, a contract manufacturer, or merely just a medical writer for a protocol. Which means we'll have a greater number of successful projects and theoretically an increased duration of patent exclusivity. Okay, I wanted to put the next two slides up because I was surprised that LNS Research last year published a paper, and within that they're suggesting one of the top challenges for shortening time to market was quality management. And you may have thought that clinical trials efficiency or scaling pilot processes might have been a greater challenge, but actually quality was recorded by over 50% of their respondents. And if you dig slightly deeper into those numbers, the top issue that LNS Research found within their customers was disparate quality systems and data sources. And so merely by linking and interoperating between quality, one source of truth, we can actually start to hit the top quality management issue within the top time to market issue for life sciences. And that's quite surprising. Okay, so I'm going to hand back to Chance for a second poll. So please do partake again, and thank you, Chance.
Excellent, thank you very much, Ken. So as Ken just mentioned, it is now time for the second poll that we'll be running today's session. So do you have an integrated quality process in your organization? Your options are no, our processes are still disconnected. Yes, some of our processes are integrated, but we could do more. Yes, some of our processes are integrated or are all integrated. Or our final option is yes, we have most of the relevant processes connected. So again, just like the last poll, if you can please select the option most relevant to you here and then press submit to log your response. And I'll just give you a few more seconds once again to respond to this before we move on to display the results. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much everyone for responding in this poll. Let's move on and see how you all responded. Okay, so we do seem to have a fairly even spread across the board here, but it does seem that some of our processes are integrated, but we can do more, is our top answer here. Ken, how do you find this spread of results?
So the first, we had a slight quality issue of our own. The first of those questions was supposed to read, yes, some of our processes are integrated, but we're quite happy with that. So I think I'll have to add together the 37 and the 24, which is something like 60 odd. So a large number of you feel that there's more work to do around integration. And a very laudable 10% feel that most of the relevant processes are already connected. So that's a great result. And I think this does highlight that if you believe LNS, that integrated quality processes are the way forward, and they're a major contributor to time to market challenges, then you've got a big opportunity, whoever you 60% are, to improve those. And as for those with the fully disconnected processes, it would be really interesting to have some feedback about how that's affecting you. And just before I jump back into the presentation, can I encourage you, I see we've already got a couple of questions coming through, but you've probably got about another 10, 15 minutes or so to add questions, and I'd encourage you to do so. And any questions that you ask will get answered either online or after the event. Okay, so thank you for the participation on those two polls. Very useful. Okay, so we're going to now move on from what the challenges are, what the benefits are of potentially meeting those challenges, to talk about some of the solutions for that. So we're looking about integrating, and here we're talking about manufacturing, but the process and quality enterprise. And I'm just going to build this up to get to the end result. Okay. So the first thing is, it's pointless having a single data model unless you can search it, unless you can index it effectively. You need to be able to collaborate across that data model and annotate and debate amongst you as to the meaning of that. And so without actually looking at the operational processes, it's really critical that that data is available to you as knowledge workers with the ability to contribute, review, and consume that data. And so really critical when we look at platforms that those platforms are able to expose that data in ways that are meaningful to knowledge workers. And when we're looking at that collaboration, we mustn't think within individual department boundaries, but look across process development, tech ops, the process sciences, and those collaborating with the shop floor operators, plant supervisors, etc. So that when we're designing production processes, we can get the feedback from the shop floor about how that operates in real life. When we're looking at process development, we can see how the process impacts the final product quality through the feedback of actual raw batch data. And that collaboration obviously is not just within our manufacturing sites, but also with our contract manufacturers and with the original R&D. That's me. All of those things together allow us to make better, knowledge-driven, actionable decisions faster across the global supply chain. And that therefore contributes to product quality, not just in terms of improved processes, but in terms of faster response, faster notification of issues, etc. Okay. We have a couple of real-life customer observations on taking this approach. And again, if you want to challenge these, please do talk to us offline, and we can give you some backup. I'm not going to mention company names in this, but these are obviously sourced to companies in the originals. So 87% reduction in material used during development. So we're looking here at chemical and material use in initial development of drugs. And 95% aggregate reduction in time for data aggregation, which sounds like a crazy big number. Of course, you need to know how long data aggregation takes in the first place to know how important that is. Whereas, I think very impressively, a $20 million saving in batch failure reduction. And so here, by monitoring the parameters within production, taking very fast action on things drifting towards being out of tolerance then allows us to have many fewer batch failures. We're also seeing a 50% reduction in FDA on-site inspection time at one particular customer, and a 90% reduction in the time taken to generate APRs. APRs being annual product reports, or PQRs, product quality reports. And that's where some of our products allow you to generate the charts and the data that supports APRs in an automatic way. Okay, so some quite large reported savings, and specifically within the quality area, 95% time savings in data aggregation for APRs, and a 15% productivity improvement in tech transfer. So there are substantial, measurable accounting style benefits that we can get from one quality. But I think more broadly than that, we're beginning to see quality move out of thinking of it as regulatory compliance, moving up towards excellence in quality, excellence in the overall operation, and then enterprise excellence. And if I look at that in one example, then regulatory compliance might be producing procedures for manufacturing, getting those trained into the shop floor staff. Quality excellence might be control processes. So instead of producing paper for batch records, having a batch record controlling process. Operational excellence really speaks to integrating that quality. So does your batch record system automatically generate deviations based on what happens on the shop floor? Do those deviations automatically result in corrective actions if that's required? And then step up another level to enterprise excellence, and what we mean by that is, can I take all of that data I just generated in my batch system, from my laboratory testing, from the deviations and the kappas, and use that to improve the processes? I think that's the point at which we get a full closed loop in quality and allow us to have a platform for digital continuity. And I think that's really the key thing that Dassault are aiming for, is for our digital systems to match our real-life systems. Okay. So I'm circling back now to biovia One Quality as a software solution. And we talked about an open integration platform. So it's pointless if biovia are controlling your data and you're not able to access it and collaborate on it in ways that we spoke about before. So having one portal, one integration platform to access all of that data is critical. So what is One Quality in terms of the software and the processes that operate within it? And this chart really reads top to bottom in terms of complexity and importance, if you like. Within documentation, we have policies, procedures, work instructions, methods, specs, all the things that we are traditionally used to. But most of those documents can be thought of as data-driven processes as you move up that maturity curve. And so where we have test methods as documentation in most companies, some leading-edge businesses are now turning those test methods into operable, actionable processes where the data is collected as that process operates. That, of course, then can be integrated with your laboratory systems such that the output data is also available within that same process system. Equivalently, many companies have specifications held within documentation. If we begin to unpick those documents so that the specifications become data within the system, we can begin to relate those to other actions, data points, processes further down the process. And so One Quality allows you to have most of your information still in the documentation world, but to cherry pick those things that you want to automate and push up to operational processes in a seamless fashion. So I'm just going to allow this to build up. We're thinking about document management, process management. We then have a series of applications that will address ideation and research, development of procedures, EBR, batch execution, lab management and lab execution, and then data monitoring, analysis and reporting across that whole piece. So end-to-end quality. By end-to-end, we mean from discovery and ideation through research, development, regulatory approval, manufacturing and commercialization. An end-to-end quality approach that achieves enterprise excellence through one portal with one source of the truth. A lot of buzzwords there, but you can see how I've built up to that through the concepts of one source of the truth, one data platform, end-to-end quality, because we know from LNS that's where the biggest benefit can be gained within our quality organization. And one portal, one truth, because unless you can access that through one place, you're never going to be able to find it. So we think this one quality approach gives you benefits in reductions in cost, improved compliance, better product quality, because you can take action more quickly, you can take action more effectively, you can shorten the path from problem to solution. Improved oversight and decision making, because you have one source of the truth, you have one place to get it, and you can collaborate and integrate that data model into other systems. That results in enterprise excellence, which has got to be one of the keys to brand protection and improved profitability. Okay, that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. We do have time for questions. I'll just hand back to Chance to describe that process.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ken. So we are now going to start going through the questions that we already have sent in. We do have a few, but please send through any others that you may think of, and we'll try and get through as many as we can in the time that we have left. Okay, so the first question that we have for you here, Ken, is where do your customers see the biggest benefit of an end-to-end quality approach?
Thanks, Chance. And I am just reading that question as we go. Where do I see the biggest benefit end-to-end quality approach? That's a great question. I think the initial benefit is in reduced cost and increased performance. And that's the way people measure that fastest. However, probably the biggest long-term benefit is in product quality. Okay, Chance?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ken. Moving on to our next question. Which integration between which quality areas are the most impactful ones? Okay, that's another great question. I think the one I mentioned earlier possibly is the most impactful, which is beginning to automate your manufacturing batch system and turn all that paper that's in the batch processing into data. That leads on to so many downstream benefits, and I've listed a few already, but deviations, CAPAs, out of specifications, automated deviation handling. If you haven't had enough active from the dispensing machine, then loop the batch round, take some from the next batch, join those together and carry on. Those are very easy to do in a data world, but take quite a lot of time on paper. Then when you look after the batch process, then having that information in a digital form allows you to begin to automate annual product reporting, product quality reporting, which is a major cost and resource drain, and also a potential issue if you're not aware of what that APR is going to say until you get to the point of producing it. So I think that's probably the strongest integration area, although I would also say having a way to make your lab notebooks permanent and secure within a document management vault is also a good one, as is linking your lab notebooks to your chemical inventory. Thank you, Chance. I'll take another one if there's another. Yeah, we do have a few more. Just before I ask you the next question, we've had a few requests for the slides to be sent to people. If you get in touch with biovia directly using the Contact Us widget, so that's one of the widgets at the bottom that you should see with an envelope, you can send in your request and they will get back in touch with you. Okay, so back to the questions. The next one is, which aspects of quality should I address first?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm just going to push a slide back to you. We would say, if you like building a house, if you don't get the foundation right, everything you do afterwards is a waste of time. Equivalently, we would say start as early in the process as possible and ripple the quality down through the process. So if you are a manufacturing organization, start with the documentation of your manufacturing processes, and then work on the automation further downstream. If you're an early stage discovery company, then look at locking down your intellectual property early and get that under control, so that once you get to the stage of moving into the clinic, then you already have that information in a controlled, secured environment. Okay, thank you, Chance.
Thank you, Ken. Our next question is just asking if you can provide an example of how biovia handles supplier management of excipient or packaging component suppliers.
Okay, that's a very specific question. Thank you. We have a number of different ways of handling that, depending on the viewpoint you're taking. So if we look at supplier management as an overall topic, there's obviously a contractual process around that. And then post-contract, there's then the issue of managing specifications, handling supplier corrective actions, dealing with inspections and audit, etc. So each of those may have their own individual challenges, but we would say the start point is to agree with the supplier a common interchange format and a common place to go to collaborate. And so we have products around collaboration that you can use for that sort of process. But I think probably the critical thing is getting that data model agreed at the time you're doing the contract, so that you can then exchange, particularly in the context of packaging, you can exchange that format in electronic format. Okay, Chance.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Ken. I think that's all the questions that we're going to run through in today's session, so thank you to everyone that sent them in. If we didn't get around to answering your question, then we will forward it on to Ken and Dassault Systèmes biovia, and you'll receive a response in due course. So that just leaves me to thank Ken for what was a great presentation, and also a big thank you to Dassault Systèmes biovia for sponsoring the session, and finally, thank you to everyone who attended the webinar today. You will receive an email when the on-demand version of this webinar becomes available, or you can access this through our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. Please continue to ask your questions, vote in the polls, and interact with all of the widgets, as the on-demand version remains fully interactive. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on our website and follow us on Twitter at BRWebinars, and join our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. Thank you once again, and I hope you all have a nice day.